Picture this for a second. Rows and rows of screaming loud AI servers. The power meters spinning like crazy. And in the middle of all that, a tiny silver box, a Mac Mini, quietly doing the same job at a fraction of the energy. Sounds insane, right? But if the rumors about Apple's upcoming M5 Pro Mac Mini are even half true, that tiny box might become the most unexpected weapon in the AI arms race. Especially for energy-stressed, memory-starved data centers in the US and around the world. In this video, I'm going to walk you through why people are even talking about Mac Minis as a serious alternative to NVIDIA GPUs. How Apple's unified memory and Thunderbolt technology could change the game. And one specific scenario where a cluster of M5 Pro Mac Minis might actually beat traditional GPU servers on cost and efficiency. And just so we're clear, a lot of this is based on leaks, reports, and early experiments, not official Apple announcements. But if you care about AI, power bills, or the future of computing, you're going to want to hear this all the way through. Let's start with the problem nobody in AI really wants to talk about: energy. Right now, AI is burning electricity like there's no tomorrow. Training and running large models on GPUs like NVIDIA's RTX 4090, or worse, on huge data center cards, is insanely power-hungry. We're talking hundreds of watts per GPU, multiplied by thousands of GPUs, running 24/7. In the US, energy costs are already a major line item for data centers. Utilities are warning about grid stress. Some regions are pushing back on new AI facilities because they simply can't handle the demand. And all of that is before we even get to the next generation of larger models. At the same time, there's another crisis brewing in the background: memory. Modern AI doesn't just want compute. It wants massive amounts of superfast memory, especially high-bandwidth memory, HBM. That's the insanely expensive memory strapped directly to data center GPUs. And the demand for HBM is so high that it's driving up DRAM prices across the entire industry. So data centers are stuck between two walls: energy on one side, memory cost on the other. Now into this mess walks Apple. When you think AI servers, you don't think Apple. You think NVIDIA, AMD, maybe specialized AI chips from companies like Google or Amazon. Apple, in most people's minds, is the company that makes iPhones and shiny laptops. But Apple's M-series chips, the ones inside, are quietly doing something very important. They're pushing the absolute limits of performance per watt. These chips were built for battery-powered devices. That means every watt of energy has to count. And the result is that chips like the M2, M3, and now M-series Pro and Max versions can do a surprising amount of ML and AI work at a fraction of the power of a big desktop GPU. There are already real-world tests showing that for simpler machine learning workloads, smaller models, and lighter inference tasks, it can actually be cheaper to run them on Apple Silicon than on a high-end NVIDIA RTX 4090, once you factor in power consumption and hardware cost. So the idea that Apple Silicon can be cost-effective for AI isn't fantasy. It's already happening, or just at a small scale. Now, here's where things start to get interesting. One of Apple's secret weapons is something called unified memory. On a typical PC with a big GPU, you have separate memory pools. The CPU has its own RAM. The GPU has its own VRAM, like the 24 gigabytes on an RTX 4090. When you train or run a model, data has to constantly move back and forth between these pools. It works, but it's not ideal. Apple's M-series chips do it differently. The CPU, GPU, and neural engine all share one big pool of memory, unified memory. That means if your Mac has, say, 64 or even 128 gigabytes of unified memory, well, those compute units can see the same data without expensive copies across a bus. Now compare that to a single 24 gigabyte GPU. Even today, you can buy Macs with way more memory available to your AI workloads than a single consumer GPU. And if rumors are right, the upcoming M5 Pro Mac Mini could push that even further. More CPU cores, more GPU cores, and a much higher unified memory ceiling. Some tipsters are even claiming we might see a 24-core GPU design, with a dedicated neural accelerator attached to each core. If that happens, every GPU core becomes smarter, more specialized for AI. Now remember the memory crisis? While the rest of the AI world is fighting over limited HBM for GPUs, Apple's approach, lots of unified memory, tightly integrated on package, starts to look very attractive. You don't get the same raw bandwidth as HBM, but you get something else, a big, flexible memory pool that's relatively easier to scale and cheaper to provision for many real-world workloads. So now we've got three important ingredients: highly efficient chips designed for low power, a unified memory system that can hold bigger models than a single GPU VRAM pool, without crazy complexity, and an AI industry that is desperate to cut power and memory costs any way it can. But there's still a huge catch. And this is where the rumors about Thunderbolt 5 come in. Running a single Mac as an AI box is cool. But data centers don't run a single box, they run clusters. Big, coordinated groups of machines tied together with extremely fast, low-latency networks like InfiniBand or Advanced Ethernet. Traditionally, Thunderbolt is not that. It's a high-speed cable you use to plug in displays, docks, and drives, not something you'd use as the backbone of a data center cluster. However, reports and early demos suggest that newer versions, including what people are calling macOS 26.1 in the near future, may unlock a new low-latency Thunderbolt 5 mode that bypasses the standard TCP/IP networking stack. In plain English, instead of talking over normal network protocols like your home Wi-Fi or Ethernet, two Macs could talk to each other over Thunderbolt in a much more direct, faster, lower latency way. Developers have already started experimenting with this kind of setup. One creator, Alex Ziskind, showed that not only can Apple Silicon beat the RTX 4090 in cost for some simpler ML tasks, but by chaining multiple Macs together with high-speed connections, you can dramatically scale up what you can handle, even with more demanding AI workloads. Now, zoom out and imagine this at the M5 Pro Mac Mini level. Apple releases a Mac Mini in 2026 with an M5 Pro chip. It has a 24-core GPU. Every core has its own neural accelerator. It supports a huge chunk of unified memory, maybe 64, 96, or even 128 gigabytes, in a relatively compact, low-power box. You take not one, but 10. 20, 50 of these Mac Minis. You wire them together using this new low-latency Thunderbolt 5 feature. Instead of bulky rack-mount GPU servers drawing thousands of watts each, you've got compact Mac Minis sipping power, but delivering a surprising amount of collective compute and memory. From the point of view of an energy-stressed, memory-starved data center, the kind that's already maxing out its power contract and struggling to afford enough high-bandwidth GPU memory, that's a wild proposition. Is it going to replace a massive NVIDIA H100 or B200 supercluster for training frontier-scale models? No, not anytime soon. But here's the twist that most people miss. Not every AI workload is a 500 billion parameter model. The world is quietly running millions of small and medium-sized models. Recommendation systems, fraud detection, personalization engines, local language models, vision models, content moderation models. Things that don't need a skyscraper of HBM, but still need to be fast, cheap, and always on. This is exactly where something like an M5 Pro Mac Mini cluster starts to make sense. For these types of models, power efficiency often matters more than raw peak performance. If you can serve the same number of inferences per second at 1/3 or 1/4 of the power, you win, especially in the US, where energy prices and regulations are only going one way. Up, add to that the unified memory advantage. You can host larger models than a single consumer GPU can handle, without sharding them awkwardly across devices or buying enterprise-grade GPU hardware. So what we're really talking about is this. Not Mac Mini replaces NVIDIA in every data center, but Mac Mini clusters quietly eat away at the lower and middle tiers of AI workloads, where efficiency and memory per dollar matter more than headline flops. And here's the part you've been waiting for, the one specific scenario where this could be a genuine game changer. Imagine you're a mid-sized US company. You're not OpenAI, you're not Google. You're running a mix of internal AI workloads, recommendation models, some internal language models, maybe fine-tuning open-source models on your private data. You need reliability, You need privacy, you need predictable costs, but you don't need the absolute cutting edge. Right now, your options are pay cloud providers to run those models on expensive GPUs and bleed money every month, or build your own GPU cluster on-prem, dealing with power, cooling, networking, and the insane pricing and lead times of GPU hardware. Now picture a third option. You build a small, dense cluster of M5 Pro Mac Minis in a few racks. Each Mac Mini is quiet, low power, and packed with unified memory. Thunderbolt 5 gives you fast, low-latency interconnects between boxes. You use Apple's ML frameworks or containerized workloads to distribute your models across the cluster. Your power draw? Way lower than an equivalent GPU setup. Your memory situation? Way more flexible, with big unified pools across dozens of machines. Your hardware? Readily available, with Apple's famously tight integration between hardware and software. In that very specific, very common scenario, the Mac Mini cluster isn't a toy anymore. It's a serious, cost-effective alternative. Will hyperscale cloud providers suddenly rip out their NVIDIA racks and replace them with Apple hardware? No, the software ecosystem, management tools, and scale requirements just aren't there yet. But will thousands of smaller players, startups, labs, enterprises, be tempted by an on-prem AI stack that's simple, energy efficient, and memory rich? That's where this gets very real. So, where does that leave us? On one side, we have the traditional AI path, giant GPUs, enormous power draw, scarce and expensive HBM, and a race to ever larger models that only a handful of companies can afford. On the other side, we have an unexpected challenger, a tiny desktop box that, with the right chip, the right memory architecture, and the right interconnect, could become the backbone of a new class of AI infrastructure. Smaller, more efficient, and a lot more accessible. The rumored M5 Pro Mac Mini won't kill NVIDIA. It won't solve every energy or memory problem in AI, but it might quietly open up a whole new lane in the AI highway, one where performance per watt, unified memory, and clever clustering matter more than brute force GPU power. And if Apple really does ship what the leaks suggest, more cores, more unified memory, neural accelerators everywhere, and low-latency Thunderbolt 5 clustering, the real question isn't, is this crazy? The real question is, in a world where AI is running out of power and memory, can we afford not to take something like this seriously? If you found this breakdown useful, and you want more deep dives into the future of AI hardware and unexpected tech shifts like this, make sure you stick around, because what's coming next in this space is going to be even wilder.